Our job as regulators is to protect consumers, but it's not what we see as the entire job. We have to promote a competitive and a transparent environment. We have to have people getting the products they need, and that's not possible without innovation. It's easy to say no. Innovation is a different mindset. Innovation says there's stuff out there that can help, that we need to encourage, that we need to bring in. And the scary part about innovation, certainly for us as regulators, is that a necessary precondition for innovation is an acceptance of failure. I'm Andrew Mais, Commissioner of the Connecticut Insurance Department, and this is the future of insurance.
Commissioner, it's really good to sit down with you. I appreciate you being here. As I mentioned to you before we recorded, I've wanted to have the regulatory viewpoint in the show for a long time. So thank you so much for taking some of your day to do this.
Well, Bryan, thank you for having me, and I'm happy to share what we do. And I think, and I'm hoping that anybody who does business, any part of the industry in Connecticut, as well as other stakeholders, consumers, everybody understands that we're in this together. That's been my philosophy here. This is a department where we're open to everyone, and part of that openness includes communication with everyone. We love to tell you what regulators do, so happy to be here.
Good. And I'm of the same boat. I always think we can either hold regulation, or internally we talk a lot about the compliance department as if it's these evil people on the side who won't let us do anything. And when I see folks who take more of a collaboratory approach, those are the carriers that I think perform the best. So I'm definitely of that mindset. If you don't mind, I'd love to just start off with your background. So who are you? How did you get to do the work that you're doing?
Weird background. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee as we go here. Yeah, it's interesting. And this is one of those things that I say to my people, I say broadly, I say as I travel with this industry, we do not do a good job of marketing ourselves as an industry. Nobody knows how much this industry has to offer on every level, whether or not you want to sell, you want to market, you want to be a data scientist, you're a numbers person. There is so much opportunity here, and you work for an industry that at the end of the day, you're helping people.
Yeah.
You can go home knowing that you've done something that's made society better. And, that's not being able to reach, we know we have a talent gap. We've got to reach younger people. We know you start talking about insurance or the cocktail party and people move away. And again, it's because we don't market ourselves properly. And I'm an object lesson for that. I'm actually a midlife switch to insurance. And I will tell you what happened with me. I had a friend who was, I live in Wilton, Connecticut, former police chief Randy Mineo. After he retired here, he moved back to New York, where he was from. And he was with the New York Liquidation Bureau, which is the arm of the side. I'm not entirely sure how you describe it, but it's a part of the then New York State Insurance Department that handles receiverships, liquidations, rehabs, that kind of thing. And Randy knew at the point where I started that I was looking for a new challenge, and he said, "Why don't you consider insurance?" And I said, "Insurance? You got to be crazy."
Yeah, that's what everybody says.
Exactly, it's the typical reaction. And you know what? But he convinced me, and I went in, met with people, including the then superintendent. This was under Governor Pataki. And I said yes, and I'm so thrilled that I did. I've been able to have a wonderful second career in insurance. I've worked on both sides. I've worked as a regulator through some of the most difficult times that we faced as a nation through 2008, some of the interesting times, including when we first started with the Affordable Care Exchange, for instance, on down now back as a regulator, working through COVID, working through geopolitical issues like the war in Ukraine and the impact on U.S. insurers. And I've seen the regulatory side. I've seen the company side working. I worked with a Big Four firm for quite a while as part of their insurance practice. And I have to say, this has been the most rewarding journey I've ever been on. And this last position just caps it off as commissioner. At the time, it was actually a couple of former commissioners who said, you really should consider this when this opening was here. And I said, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be the right person. Again,
Yeah.
I'm not real bright, as you can tell. People have
Okay.
pulled me in the right directions. But I came here, work with some wonderful people, both in the Connecticut State Insurance Department throughout the nation and internationally. And I'm
Yeah.
so happy I'm here.
Well, it is. I mean, it is. It's a much more interesting world than I think people ever realize. To your marketing point, because the number of people who have that story of I fell into it by accident, someone pushed me, someone mentioned it, and I wouldn't have thought of it before. And I'm so glad they did. No one ever ends with I wish they never opened their mouth.
Absolutely.
Maybe I wouldn't be talking to those people, but I think you're spot on about the marketing need there, just to change minds proactively. But the other thing about your experience in particular is you mentioned these different stages that you've been able to participate in, and Connecticut in particular has, because of its history as being this hub of insurance, I've seen a lot of activity around trying to foster change and growth and new thinking in the industry. And you've also had that exposure nationally, internationally as well. And I want to talk about the NAIC, your role as president-elect of the NAIC in a moment. But thinking about innovation in particular, this is one where I've talked to so many carriers and lived in several where, whether it's the regulators or, as I said, compliance, or name your sort of like police type place, we use that, I think, as an excuse not to try. And as I said, I've seen others where they embrace, they collaborate, and instead of being this roadblock or this thing you have to get around, it actually is a partner in helping you figure it out. And I've seen Connecticut as one of those states where you have been trying to be collaborative and try to work through. I'm curious about your take on how insurance regulation can actually help with innovation, and how you've been able to do that, or how you think about that.
Well, Brian, first of all, I'm glad to hear that Connecticut has a reputation as one of the places that would support innovation, because that's something we've worked very hard to do. I've got a
Yeah.
number of people on staff who they're in my office every other day telling me new stuff they've seen, and wondering, how that fits into the environment. For us, you go back to the core mission. Let's go back to core principles. The first principles. Our job as regulators is to protect consumers. You can read that very narrowly by saying, the contract language has to be precise and follow state laws. You got to make sure people get paid and all of that stuff, which is nice and it's part of the job, but it's not what we see as the entire job.
Yeah.
We have to promote a competitive and a transparent environment. We have to have people getting the products they need. And that's not possible without innovation. We want to make sure, and this is a goal of the department, that as many people as possible have access to as many relevant products as possible without any unnecessary barriers, that we reduce the friction, and that would lead, we hope, to lower cost products that the consumers that we are sworn to protect, that those consumers can use. Because to us, that's consumer protection. It doesn't matter, if you got this great solvent industry, if people can't get your products.
Right.
We know there are areas where consumers aren't getting enough of the products they need, or don't think that they have the ability to get those. Life insurance is one. Great product, the penetration isn't there. There's
Yeah.
an awful lot going on in the P&C field right now. But, it's easy to say no. And as regulators, we're either responsible to the governors who appointed us or to the voters who elected us. And that can, if we let it become a constraint, because I'd say if you go back to the old days when I was really, really young, so the young people today aren't going to get this one, but nobody ever got fired buying IBM.
Yeah.
You can't get criticized for doing the same thing over and over, because hey, it's been proven.
Right.
Doesn't work, though, at least not for me,
Yeah.
not in the long run. It doesn't encourage innovation. Innovation is a different mindset. Innovation says there's stuff out there that can help, that we need to encourage, that we need to bring in. And the scary part about innovation, certainly for us as regulators, is that a necessary precondition for innovation is an acceptance of failure.
Yeah.
And it's one thing if you're doing, some social media platform. Yeah, you crashed today, you can fix it, and nobody cares. Insurance is a product that people depend on in its various forms. We have to balance our desire to be innovative with protecting consumers. With that said, so there's probably a deeper look than you would find, in Silicon Valley, where it's break things fast. We want to make sure that if something breaks, consumers are protected.
Yeah.
But we also know the benefits of innovation. Again,
Yeah.
better customer experiences. I mean, remember the old days when, and I'll go back to life insurance, not to pick on that industry, but the old days when you had to, but it's just that, when I got my life policy and you had to go through all the exams and the blood in it. Yeah. Kind of, there's almost some discouragement in there if you are not necessarily the kind of person who's decided you really need this.
Yeah.
You got to improve the customer
Yeah.
experience. You got to bring better products, better services to people. And we've seen a tremendous change over the past few years, certainly in the and it's not restricted to the property casualty field, but since I've been harassing the life insurance, I'm going to
You're
talk
spreading
about
the love. That's okay. Yeah.
the property casualty field, where you see the movement. You look at cyber, you look at homeowners, it's across the board. You see a
Yeah.
movement from insurance simply being risk transference to risk mitigation.
Yeah.
That's a win-win for everyone. It
Yeah.
increases efficiency, it reduces costs, and it provides more and better overall coverage.
Yeah.
So that's why here in Connecticut, what we've done, and as I mentioned, we've decided that innovation needs a collaborative approach for so many reasons.
Yeah.
One is that it allows us as regulators to stay informed and to proactively adapt the regulatory frameworks. Now, we know regulation is almost never going to be in front of innovation. Innovation by its very nature will be lead, but we've got to be fast followers. What we
Yeah.
cannot be, certainly in Connecticut, we can't be roadblocks to innovation. Okay? We have to be flexible enough to accommodate that innovation while making sure that we've got the appropriate insight. And as an example, you look at the insurtech here in Hartford, where we're headquartered in Hartford, Connecticut, which is, of course, the insurance capital of the known universe. And we have, that we've spoken to a number of our friends who landed on UFOs who do agree, just in case you're wondering.
Yeah. They
There's
check
been,
Mars. It's clear.
yeah,
Yeah.
we are the ones. But what we've done is, in addition to engaging with all the insurers, we've also engaged with the insurtech companies.
Yeah.
And the all these startups. And we've got this thriving ecosystem here. Part of that is comprised of people who don't necessarily understand insurance or the regulatory environment. If you're coming from the equivalent of Silicon Valley or Israel or South Africa or Australia, and we have all these people here.
Yeah.
And you're used to a tech world, you may not understand what you need to do for insurance, but we have people on staff who will meet with you, who will talk you through this, who will get you to yes, because that's what we're trying to do. We don't want to be the person, the bad compliance department. I shouldn't say bad compliance department, but the compliance department that says no at the end. What we want to do is work with you through the process so that you can create those products that our consumers want, so that insurers in general can experiment. You need that room to experiment and to bring new ideas to the marketplace.
Yeah. I want to dig into, there were a few things I wanted to dig into, including your IBM comment, because I think that mindset is at the heart of a lot of the issue in how we go about change and innovation in insurance. But I want to park that because there's something I really want to get into right now is what you're talking about in Connecticut in particular. One of the things I've witnessed and getting to participate in some of the events that have gone on in Hartford. I had an office in Farmington for 6 years or something. So, I was down there a lot. Um, Connecticut versus some of the other states that I've seen has taken this collaborative within government and sort of quasi-governmental organizations collaborative approach to the engagement. So it's not just what is the DOI doing or not doing, and what is the economic development team doing or not doing. It's you have all of these different pieces that, at least from the outside view, seem to be coordinated. I mean, you all shared a stage at InsurTech Hartford at the symposium. You've got the program at UConn. There from the outside in, it does appear that it was a decision by the state. We need to join up. We need to use all of our assets and sort of collaboratively engage with the industry. Is that just by chance, or is that actually the strategy?
I think it partly evolves out of who we are as Connecticut. We are now we've got this highly educated workforce with a
Yeah.
really top-notch knowledge base. So that leads to one particular form of engagement. But certainly the state, and definitely under Governor Lamont, what we have seen is that in order to progress, we can't rely on just, giving big tax breaks to people. Anybody can do that. What
Yeah.
we need is to have a situation where a prospective company starting up or a company chooses to grow sees the state as a unit working together. And yeah, the changes that we've made, certainly, under this governor, just in the time where I've been here, to go, broader than simply insurance. But if you go onto the website, for instance, if you're a business, you go to one place and you can get access to everything that you need. You don't have to go from place to place.
Yeah.
We recognize that you are a consumer.
Yeah.
That's a bottom line, and we are here to serve you. We and in turn to serve the state.
Yeah.
And certainly, as you mentioned with Hartford, you can look at some of the stuff that we've done, whether it's working with InsurTech Hartford, with Metro Hartford, working with some of the insurance. So you look at S4E, for instance,
Yeah.
one of the insurance companies that actually hosts startups.
Yeah.
We go through all of that we do, and what I would call the early intervention. So people thinking of getting started in business, or people working here, know they have access to everyone in state government. Everyone working for them is to create that atmosphere where success is possible. I mean,
Yeah.
that's when you get right down to it. This is how a good business works. And this is how the state should work for everyone in the state, for consumers and industry alike. We're committed to it.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I just had Paul Tyler on talking about what NASA is doing. There is an energy and a coordination. Always more to be done, but it looks like a specific thing in Connecticut and has an impact. You have another purview, just from your work in the NAIC, and as you said, even some international view as well. I'm curious, as you look around, what are some of the other things you see going on, maybe in different states or even different countries, that you say, that's something that can help drive the industry. That's something we should be thinking about, whether it's for regulators, for governments, for carriers, or the startups. What are some of the things that you think could help drive, the progress for the industry?
I'm not going to cite any specific things there. What I will say is that if you look at insurance, you see that the federalist idea, the states as the engine for innovation, laboratories for democracy, and in this case, laboratories for regulation, is working. We've got, through the NAIC, this national system of state-based regulation, which enables us to share efforts, to
Yeah.
share information, to share knowledge. And yeah, just to, I said I was going to say anything, but I'll give you just one example that I'm looking at here in Connecticut. Part of my concern with the property casualty in Connecticut is climate change. And that is partly because we have a significant amount of our insured property. We've got the second highest level of our insured property along the coast and vulnerable to climate change of
Yeah.
any other state. Only Florida has more. Now, what do we want? We want to make sure that those people and anybody affected by climate change has access not just to insurance, because that's one thing. We got to work. We got to make sure that their reinsurance market is good. The insurance market is good. We have to make sure they've got access to insurance. But we also have to make sure not just for not just for the industry, but for the consumer as well, and for the state, that the need for that insurance when we have a particular event strike us may actually be less. And we know the way to do this is by mitigating the risk. All right. So, some of the stuff we can do is easy. And here in Connecticut, we have, the insurance department is a significant part of the Governor's Council on Climate Change, where we go around working to increase the various building standards, all that. What else can we do? That's something that we look at constantly. And what we've been looking at, and I say this, only as an example of the kind of things that states can teach each other, is what different states have been doing, from Louisiana, Alabama, California. What have they been doing to enable communities to mitigate risk?
Yeah.
And to do it, right now we're leaning towards some kind of grant making or loan funds, especially for those least able to afford it. So you see some states are doing that. You see what, Alabama, for instance, has a great program. You look at California on the other side, and there are some interesting things going on in California in terms of, and I'm not sure how exactly to describe it, but it's a community level effort where the entire community gets together. Insurance company provides insurance, but it also reduces their insurance costs because they can issue a bond so that individual houses can take mitigation methods. You're going to reduce the probable maximal loss in the event of a hurricane or a wildfire. But that's the kind of thing that we learn from each other. And some of that is formal. Some of that really is just, we go to these meetings and we text each other, we chat with each other. And it's really, so how's that working out for you? Let me see how that's going to work out for us. And that's, that's part of what we have. The fact that we don't have this federal framework that's saying, there's only one way to do things. That's part of what makes insurance, certainly, it's made the insurance industry in this country special. And as we've seen over the past, through the past crisis, both the recent banking crisis and with COVID, it's made it strong, and it will make our consumers strong.
Yeah. I do like that notion that you can't just come at it from one side, from the risk transfer side, because there comes a point when we see this with some coastal homeowners where getting or wildfire, I should say, getting capacity is a problem. So can you get capacity? But then once you got it, it's too expensive for a lot of consumers to afford. And so just because you can get it doesn't mean they can afford it. So effectively, home ownership is out of the question. So what can you do to the actual risks that are getting transferred in the first place to try to change the nature of them, the scale of them, protect them? Or I had Dr. Rick Spinrad, who runs NOAA, on the show, and he was raising it. Should we be building in some of these places?
Yeah.
If yes, then, okay, well, what mitigating factors do we need to employ? Or, you shouldn't build there, and
Right.
all of that. It's a holistic question. You can't just throw money at it after the fact.
Absolutely. And we also know that there are areas that you wouldn't think of. And if we're, let's just deal with floods, for instance, certain flood plains, because of the history of our nation. And, the flood plains, you can build in at the least advantage among us were able to do that. They still may be the ones least able to address it.
Right.
What do we do? Right up front that depending on what you do, the investment in mitigation, every dollar you invest, you get somewhere between $4 and $12 back. That's what the research has shown us. Isn't that a worthwhile investment to make? How do we encourage that investment?
I can't think of other 4 to 12x ROI investments that people ever look at.
If you look
yeah.
at my portfolio, I can tell you there aren't too many.
Yeah. There's a decimal somewhere in there that we're leaving off when we talk about it. But
Absolutely.
I do, in the interest of time, I just want to think about kind of looking forward. You know, as you look ahead, all the things that you've been able to be a part of, are there sort of words of parting wisdom you would leave people with to think about, how do we hand in hand regulation and industry come together to help move this industry ahead?
Yeah, it's the idea of collaboration, the idea of working together is central, certainly to me. I don't think, and I know there are places where you get an us versus them mentality. I don't think that works.
Yeah.
And that's just a philosophical difference. We all have to participate in the system. And by all of us, I mean regulators, legislators, consumers, and companies. We're all stakeholders in this great experiment. And we all have to support each other as we move forward. Believe it or not, and I'm not normally, I can be cynical, but when it comes to the insurance, I think we all have the same goal in mind. We all want to make sure that protection is available because it is in the best interest of everyone in that system. So that's why we say, one of the things I always say, and if you were at InsurTech Hartford at the last event, that when they asked the advice, I think I said, come talk to us. Come talk to us early. It is not in our interest as regulators to tell you, no, you can't do that. It's in our interest to look at the idea and to try to help you figure out a way. If this is an idea that can help, how do we get it? How do we get to yes? How do we get to somewhere where we can make it work for consumers? And for regulators, for industry, for everyone, there's got to be a certain basic level of self-respect. There's got to be honesty. You can't hold back. And I think the companies that work here will know that there are times we are going to disagree strongly, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You got your particular viewpoint, and I've got mine. But let's talk about it, and let's see what we can do to fulfill that goal of consumer protection.
Yeah. Wise words that I think everyone needs to take to heart. Commissioner, thank you so much for the time today.
Oh, thank you so much, Bryan. Again, it was great being here. I appreciate the opportunity, and all the best.
Thank you so much to Commissioner Mais. It was really good to sit down with him and just hear that perspective, because we don't get that very much. And I know for so many in the industry, we see regulation, regulators, compliance as this barrier or this other thing that we shouldn't actually talk to because then they'll ruin everything. And I've totally seen the opposite. When you collaborate, when you work together, you actually can work through and with to develop something better and something that doesn't hit a roadblock at the 11th hour when you needed it to go through the most. If you're not talking up front and collaboratively, you miss that whole opportunity. Brilliant words of wisdom from him. And of course, as a president-elect of the NAIC, he's not just talking about Connecticut, but he holds that view, and his peers that he knows and works with regularly, they're of the same mind. So he's giving you that really broad perspective. This is not just a Connecticut story, but of course, a lot of activity going on in Connecticut because historically they've been in the right position for insurance and they want to keep that going. And so they have decided across the different pieces of the government and other sectors that the government gets to work with that they want to be supportive of insurance and insurtech and moving it forward. Love seeing all of that. Very cool efforts going on there. Thank you to Commissioner Mais for sharing a bit of that and his perspective. And I didn't prime him. I didn't tell him about my book. I didn't mention anything about, I got this new thing about collaboration. That he did that all his own. And it was so timely and so important because I am such a fan of that message. I know it's the path to unlocking what we could be in this industry. And it's the underlying nature of what we do. Risk transfer, risk pooling. These are collaborative efforts. We work together for capital, for delivering our services, for distributing our services. You can't get around the importance of collaboration in this industry. And that's why I wanted to write about it for the third book in the Future of Insurance series, the blue one. The Future of Insurance, Volume 3, The Collaborators. And I'm looking around because I wanted to hold one up, and I realized I just sold the last copy this morning and it's packed up to be shipped out. So I have to order more, but you can get it at Amazon and Kindle and print as paperback or hardcover. You can get it on Audible. And once I get a few more in stock, you can order it directly from me if you want a signed copy, but it's available worldwide from Amazon. Just search The Future of Insurance in Amazon or go to future-of-insurance.com/3 and you will get all the info on the latest book. And of course, once you're at the Future of Insurance website, you can link to all the books, the podcast, everything, so you can dig in more yourself or share it with those around you, because it's through sharing great ideas, things that we can use to inspire us to move forward, that this industry gets to move ahead. That's why I do all this stuff. And I don't do it alone. I have a huge network of amazing people who have been so supportive that I get to collaborate with, including David Gritz from InsurTech New York, who worked on this book with me, and lots of other people and companies that are in the book. Check it out, future-of-insurance.com/3. Thank you again to Commissioner Mais and the whole team there. They were wonderful to work with, getting this all set up and making his time available to me so I could make his thoughts available to all of you. So appreciative of the Department of Insurance down in Connecticut for helping make this happen, and to all of you for tuning in. And I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.